This is Hazmat for non-hazmat drivers, function-specific training. Today we're going to be talking about hazardous materials shipments for drivers without hazmat endorsement. This video will go through the things you need to know regarding hazmat shipments that are Table 2 and under 1,000 pounds total of hazardous material. Before we deep dive into this, let's start very simple. First, pull out the page that looks like this. It has 4 different listings, each starting with a UN and a 4-digit number. You can remove this from the test entirely so that it's just a free page. All hazardous material entries will start the same way, with a UN number or an NA number. UN stands for United Nations and NA stands for North America. After the UN number or NA number, it will tell you the name of the hazardous material. So looking at the first one, UN 2793, ferrous metal borings is the name of the hazmat material. Following that name, we're going to see a number. In this case, 4.2. This number is the single most critical thing you want to learn. The first number after the hazmat material tells us what the hazmat class is. 4.2 means it's a spontaneously combustible material. Let's pause a moment and get the sheet that looks like this one. Hazmat information for non-hazmat drivers should be there. Pull that out from the rest of the test. You'll be using it during this training. Keep that page handy for a moment. UN 2793, ferrous metal borings 4.2. We know 4.2 is the hazmat class, the first number after the name. So let's now look at our sheet, where you will see a list of numbers on that sheet in the middle of the page. The first one is 1.1, below that 1.2. Any hazmat class that matches this chart must always be placarded and you cannot legally haul it. So let's take that 4.2 hazmat for a moment and compare it to the chart. Is 4.2 on that chart? Take a moment to see. It's not on the chart. So if this were the only hazmat and it were under 1,000 pounds, non-bulk, you without hazmat certification can haul this, and it would not require any placarding. Alright, we're going to get to it deeper into this subject, but this is the first thing you really need to understand. How to identify hazmat class and which ones you cannot haul. So let's look at another. UN 1044, fire extinguishers 2.2. First, take a moment. What is the hazmat class of this one? Take your time. Okay. Hopefully you answered 2.2. Now that you know it's 2.2, see if 2.2 is on the list. Take a look. Okay, so it's not. So non-bulk, under 1,000 pounds total, you could move this one. Let's do the next one. UN 1732, antimony pentafluoride, 8. And then in parentheses, 6.1. And then a Roman numeral 2. Looking at this one, try and determine what the hazmat class is. In this case, it's the number 8. See if the number 8 is on that sheet. You might notice this one has 2 numbers. The first number was 8, and the second number was in parentheses, which is what we call a subsidiary hazard. Only the first number counts in terms of identifying the actual hazmat class and whether placards are required. So again, let's compare to the sheet of paper. Is 8 on that list? Hopefully you agree there is no hazmat class 8 on the list. So you could haul this provided it's under 1,000 total. Last one. UN 1402, calcium carbide 4.3, Roman numeral 1. What is the hazmat class of this one? Hopefully you said 4.3. If you did not, it's time to stop the video and start over. It's critical you understand this or nothing else you learn in this video will be helpful. If you did say 4.3, take your other sheet. Look to see if it's on there. Ooh, this one is on the list, which means any quantity of that would require placards and you cannot haul it. Assuming you can now identify the hazmat classes, let's go back to our hazmat information for non-hazmat drivers page. Get that ready because we're going to reference some of the things in that as we discuss them. Most truck drivers have heard the under 1,000 pounds of hazmat is permitted to be hauled by drivers without hazmat certification. You also don't have to placard for less than 1,000 pounds of hazmat total in one load. In almost all instances, if the load requires a placard, it means the load needs a hazmat certified driver as well. There are some exceptions to this, but at JAS, if the load has a placard, even Class 9, which would not require a hazmat endorsement, we don't want the non-hazmat driver to pull it if placards are required. So let's talk about when placards are required. If a load is bulk, it always means placards. Bulk means no intermediate form of containment, meaning the only thing holding the freight is the trailer or tanker. Example, when you're hauling gas in a tanker vehicle, there are no drums involved. Or a load of potatoes in a reefer, where they don't put the potatoes in boxes, but just load that trailer up with potatoes. There are a few other things that can make something bulk as well. A maximum capacity greater than 450 liters, 119 gallons as a receptacle for liquid. A net mass greater than 400 kilograms, 882 pounds, and a max capacity greater than 450 liters as a receptacle for solid, or a water capacity greater than 454 kilograms, 1,000 pounds, as a receptacle for gas. In this one, the 119 gallons of receptacle for liquids is what we encounter the most, often doing intermodal movements. You will encounter what we call totes, or IBCs. Here's an example of a tote. If it has liquid in it, it has become a bulk load. That if it had hazmat would require placards automatically because it's bulk and a hazmat certified driver. Also, anytime you haul any liquid in totes in a container trailer, you are required to have a tanker endorsement to move it. Moving something without the proper endorsement can lead to losing your CDL if caught, so it's not something you ever want to do. So if you see totes and you don't have tanker, contact your dispatch. Don't pull a load as is. Consumer commodity. This is an exception that can allow quantities over 1,000 pounds of hazmat to be hauled by a non-hazmat driver without placards. A consumer commodity is something that is packaged like you'd buy it in the store. An easy example of this is Windex. Windex in bottles and a skid is a hazmat, but because of the packaging, you don't need endorsement to haul it. Take that same chemical, put it in drums, and then an endorsement and placards would be required. Limited quantities is another possible exception. This limited quantity means that the actual portion of the product that is hazmat is very small and packaged in a special way to make it less likely to create dangerous situations. Limited quantity exceptions allow the overall product to weigh more than 1,000 pounds, but not require a hazmat driver or placards. RQ. Reportable quantity. If you ever see the letters RQ on a BOL or a J1, it's telling you that aside from being a hazardous material, it is also a hazardous substance. It is also telling you that in a single package, there is enough material to create an issue with the environment or it to spill. All hazardous substances are also hazardous materials, but not all hazardous materials are hazardous substances. Now, you will see a chart on that hazmat page starting with 1.1 explosives. Every hazmat class on this list requires placards and requires a hazmat driver at any amount. Even a single pound would require placards and a hazmat driver. This is with good reason. All hazmat has some level of danger, but these particular hazardous listings are much more dangerous than the others. We don't haul any Table 1 materials. You are our eyes when handling a shipment. So it's important to compare the BOL to this list every time you get any amount of hazmat to make sure it is something you can haul. Now let's talk a little about packing groups. We're going to look again at our earlier example. UN 2793 ferrous metal borings 4.2 Roman numeral 3. We know the hazmat class is 4.2. The Roman numerals after are what tell us the packing group. In this case, packing group 3. There are only 3 groups. 1 is the most potent, 2 is medium potency, and 3 is the lowest potency. It's called the packing group because it also tells the shipper what type of packing is needed based on the potency of the hazmat. UN 1732 antimony pentafluoride 8 parenthesis 6.1 close parenthesis Roman numeral 2. Now let's look at that one. First, what's the hazmat class? If you said 8, you got it correct. What about the packing group? Packing group 2, correct? And what does the 2 signify? Hopefully you said medium potency. 1 the most potent, 3 is the least potent. Okay, Now let's look at a hazmat bill of lading. First, start with the Navistar Incorporated one. Pull out the BOL that looks like this one. You can tear it out of the test. A hazmat BOL has a bunch of requirements. Some are almost identical to every bill of lading. For instance, must have an origin and a destination. In this case, Joliet, Illinois is the origin, Manchester, Pennsylvania is the destination. There are three ways someone can show you something is hazmat. It could be the first line of the BOL like this is. You know it's hazmat because it starts with UN or NA and is followed by a 4-digit number. The second method they do is called the hazmat column with an X, letting you know it's hazmat. Sometimes you'll also see the letters RQ. This is also acceptable and indicates that line contains hazmat, but also the reportable quantity. Remember, we talked about RQ as a definition earlier, reportable quantities, where a single package or drum or whatever it's in is enough if it's spilled would be an environmental hazard. The third option to identify hazmat is it could be in different colors on the bill of lading. The hazard must have a number and a description of how it's packaged. In this case, it's 72 cartons. The idea is the bill of lading is letting you as the driver know what to look for to identify the hazmat inside the trailer, and also helps any emergency responder who needs to deal with it. You would know you're looking for 72 cartons that will have hazmat stickers or decals on the packaging itself. So you can see where the hazmat is located by peering in and don't necessarily have to climb inside the trailer to find it. Hazmat also must include the weight of the hazmat. In this case, it's 61.35 pounds. So let's take a look at this one. UN 1133, adhesive, 3, Roman numeral 3. Using what you've learned so far, can we haul this particular load without a hazmat endorsement and without placards? Remember, use this sheet, which helps you decide if placards are required to answer this question. Hopefully you said yes, you can haul this without endorsement, and you don't need placards on the shipment. Next thing we want to look for is the hazmat emergency phone number. On this one, if it's near the bottom corner of the page on the right. In the event of an actual emergency, you would call 911 first, then this number, and call your dispatch safety team last. Get help en route to you. If you're ever not sure if it's an emergency, then err on the side of caution. Don't seek assistance whether it's an emergency. If there's any doubt that it might be one, start by calling 911 first and get help routed to you. Last thing you're looking for is the hazmat certification, which can be found on this one right near the bottom. It starts with, this is to certify the above named materials, etc., etc. Someone from shipping must put their name here. It shouldn't be you signing it, it should be someone from shipping. It doesn't actually have to be signed, it can be printed or even computer printed on the page, but it must be legible. With the Hazmat BOL, you also need what we call safety data sheets, which used to be called MSDS sheets or material safety data sheets. These sheets tell you what the danger of the chemicals are and what to do in an emergency. This is an example of one that you're looking at. Whenever you haul any amount of hazmat, you need the Hazmat bill of lading and the SDS sheet. If a shipper says they don't have these, contact us. We can get them for you, but absolutely do not drive the load anywhere if you don't have the SDS sheet and the Hazmat BOL. You could also use an emergency response guidebook, which would have all the same information to satisfy the SDS sheet requirement. Once you have the bill of lading and the SDS sheet, you want to keep both within reach and visible without taking off your seatbelt. If you need to take off the seatbelt to get the hazmat information during a police stop, you will get a ticket, a fine, and none of the hazmat fines are affordable. They start around $1,000 and climb into the tens of thousands of dollars. Every time you park the vehicle with a hazmat, you must check the tires of your tractor and the chassis tires. This is a smart idea, hazmat or otherwise, but with hazmat shipments, it's a requirement. The concern is a bad tire could lead to a spark, and a spark could ignite any flammable materials inside. When dealing with a hazmat shipment, the best idea is to minimize stops. If it's not a necessary stop, you should proceed to ingate the load at the ramp. If you're not at the controls of the truck and need to fuel your truck or park and leave your truck, place the BOL and SDS sheets on the driver's seat. In the event you are incapacitated or not near the truck, an emergency should occur, Emergency responders are taught to look on the driver's seat or in the driver's pouch. At JAS, we want you to place it on the driver's seat always. It's much more visible that way. Okay, let's look at another bill of lading to make sure we understand what we've seen so far. Let's find the origin and destination of the shipment. Summit, Illinois to Plant City, Florida. Now let's look at the paperwork. Is this a hazmat shipment? Take a moment and look it over. Is there hazmat on this shipment? Okay, it looks like there's two different hazmats on the shipment. Let's look at the first one. What is the hazmat class of the paint? Hopefully you answered hazmat class 3. The weight on the class 3 shows 408 pounds. Can we haul hazmat class 3 flammable liquids without a hazmat endorsement at 408 pounds? Oh, don't guess the answer. Pull out the other sheet that shows what we cannot haul and compare. Again, the answer here should be yes. Let's look at the other type of hazmat. It matches. The matches. What is the hazmat class of the matches? 4.1 is the correct answer. Now, take that sheet and see if we can haul 4.1 under 1,000 pounds without placards. Can you? If you answered yes, then you are correct. The total weight of both hazmats together, 408 plus 174 equals 582. That amount of hazmat is less than 1,000 pounds, so we can haul this one. Do we need to check this BOL to make sure it has everything we need? Does the piece count have a description? It looks like 17 cartons, and the other one is 30 cases. Can we find an emergency number on the BOL? Take a moment and try to find it. We'll find it at the bottom of the page. It says InfoTrack, and it's got a phone number. Do we have a shipper certification? Yes, and the name is on there. B. Fagan is printed next to this. This is to certify just below it. Do we need anything other than the BOL? Yes, we need to make sure we have SDS pages for both of the hazmats of the shipment. And always spend some time reading them so you understand the hazmat shipment's concerns and what you should and should not do. Now let's just talk some common things you need to know. First, if you ever get to the rail and you see placards on a shipment, something is wrong. If you're watching this video is for non-hazmat endorsed drivers. Don't assume the ramp made a mistake. Contact your dispatcher. Take photos and send us copies. We will work with the shipper to find out what the mistake is. You should always check all four sides of a container for placards because sometimes a single placard can get left on a shipment. The fines for placarding something that doesn't require placards is in the tens of thousands of dollars. So it's important to check every container for any signs of placards before moving it anywhere, from whether it's the ramp, an empty yard, or a customer. If you're ever pulling an empty that has placards on it, the placards must come off. You cannot haul an empty container with placards on it. Also, we don't expect you to remember every detail every time you're hauling hazmat, especially because most of you will go a full year without encountering a hazmat load. If you do and you're unsure, take a photo of the bill of lading. Send a copy to us. Talk to us. Let us help you decide if this shipment is okay to take and what precautions you should be taking while hauling the load. So please always communicate any questions with your dispatchers.